that the purest form of freedom is the freedom of thought. If you control information, then you can control the thought. That's exactly what the Democratic Party has mastered. They started as the party of slavery, and when they lost that battle, they created new forms of slavery. Today, I'm proving that the so-called party switch is a myth and showing how the Democrats have always been the party of control. First, part 1, slavery and segregation, the original chains. So, antebellum Democrats, they founded the party of the plantation, or the party of slavery. That was the first party formed. The Republican Party formed because of slavery, to free the slaves. That was the founding of it. They backed slavery expansions and enacted the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854, and Dred Scott in 1857. Now, after the Kansas-Nebraska Act is when the Republican Party was founded. It was specifically because of this act. Republicans were the abolitionists. So Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president who freed the slaves. I think everybody who studied American history knows that. So now we move on to the Civil War outcome. Slavery was abolished in 1865. Democrats lose their literal slaves, but power structures, they don't vanish. They just morph, they change, they put on a costume, they adapt to the environment. Now it was about Reconstruction, i.e. Jim Crow. So Southern Democrats passed black codes and Jim Crow. I think black codes went along with redlining as well. They also were the founding of the KKK group, or the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. So what they did is they built the Solid South. So the votes for Democrats for 100 years in a specific demographic of land. Now it's the civil rights and the party switch myth. This is where it all started. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act, 80% GOP yes, less than 70% Dems yes. Southern Dems resisted civil rights, 1964. If you didn't know that, because they talk about Civil Rights Act all the time now in modern politics, especially coming from the left, the Democrats voted less for the Civil Rights Act than the Republicans did. Keep that in mind. Only a handful of Dixiecrats switched. I think it was maybe 7 that switched. Everybody else, their policies stayed the same. They might have said, yeah, maybe we don't do that anymore in public. Maybe we don't announce it. Maybe we don't flaunt our pointy hats around the White House. Anyway, so after the Dixiecrats switched, their branding changed. So their beliefs and tactics didn't, their branding did. And you can tell by the outcomes of the policies that are voted in. Part 2, the new slavery. The Great Society in the 1960s, LBJ's welfare expansion sold as fighting poverty, but it was actually just a lock-in poverty. The real effect was multi-generational dependency on government funding to survive. Multi-generations on welfare. They will paint it as a handout, but you owe them your life. They control the amount of food you get. They control the healthcare you get, the quality of the healthcare you get. They control your transportation. They control your childcare. That's it. and then you're voter locked. Because if you vote against Democrats, the policies change and you can lose your funding for life. If you have no drive, you get stuck in that cycle. Black poverty families are trapped in government programs, and nuclear family is destabilized because they put an replacement for the father figure is the government funding handouts. Now we're going to move to the Marxist pivot, because this is not just something that is isolated with the Democratic Party in America. This is something that has gone on through history and has been a pattern of now modern communistic countries. The new left, campus radicals, have emerged increasingly throughout the years, the last 30 years, I would say, maybe even longer than that. College is a very liberal place, and when you push more of your youth that's already in the public school system into college, they're going into debt with something that doesn't have a great return on investment for most degrees. Personally, I think there should be more certificates going around. So the SDS was pushing Marxist ideology into the party. With the SDS Port Huron statement, injected anti-capitalist participatory democracy ideas into campuses and cultural institutions. Those ideas eventually seep into policy, obviously, because they're going into the world. They seep into policy debates and the party's cultural wing. So basically, identity politics. Standing on feelings is standing on nothing. The ideas don't stay in classrooms. They get repackaged into policy and brand. So when you have these crazy political ideology, identity politics, circus that goes on in most colleges, that gets transferred into policy and branding of the party, because these are adults. They can vote. Some aren't going into Congress, in the school system, in the healthcare system. I mean, it shows, because the amount of people who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, how many nurses, how many teachers, how many professors got fired or in trouble or just put into a spotlight because they were celebrating the death of somebody practicing their free speech just because they didn't like what he was saying. Teachers, professors, doctors, etc. So the Great Society, welfare, and financial dependency. The Great Society expanded federal welfare. We already touched on that. It's definitely eroded the nuclear family and harmed marginalized people. Of course, welfare doesn't only harm people, but we should be treating it as a safety net and not a hammock, right? It doesn't need to be something that you relax in. You don't need to be there forever. You don't need to invite your kids into the hammock. It's a safety net. You crawl out and you get back up and you climb the ladder again. That's what you have to do. We're in a capitalist society, a free capitalist society. That's what you need to do. I understand it's hard in certain economic times, and I also want to point out that you voted for it when we were voting in democratic policy. Just by the way. Neocons play a part too, don't get me wrong, for sure. Some people call it unintended dependency initiatives, but I don't find it to be very unintended when they went from having a certain idea of a certain group of people was the whole frame point of their party. centralized control of these people, and then these people, and then all people. They're the party of slavery, now and forever. Now we're moving on, information and thought control. So I'm not going to go Candace Owens on everybody. I might go Candace Owens, but I'm not going there yet. She is much more down the rabbit hole than I am, for sure. So with media dominance, education curriculums being in control of political funding, or being from political funding, and big tech censorship. We just heard about this with Google. They just released a statement saying that they were censored, and they were told to and pressured by the Biden administration. This is something that came out and everybody knows about. So these are the allegations from Google. I'm not making these allegations. And of course, we already know about what's going on with Comey. He has been indicted for lying to Congress. This is factual. Oh, let's see, there's more. Oh, yes, and then Mark Zuckerberg, under oath, stating that he was pressured and his staff was pressured to censor C-19 information, and doctors were losing their accounts that were speaking against it. People were losing their accounts, even if they weren't doctors, for talking about it, and for talking about the Hunter Biden laptop situation. They were losing their YouTube accounts. I think Alex Jones was one of them. Candace Owens was one of them. A lot of people lost their accounts. So, big tech censorship, media dominance, in Democratic ran media sites like CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS. 97% was about negative things about Trump. They have no other material with everything going on around the world and in our country. They have nothing else. Well, they're probably just trying to distract with the easiest manipulated emotion, which is anger and fear. And when you are in anger and fear constantly, fight or flight constantly, you are much easier to manipulate. This is Plato's warning in action. Chains on thought and not just on body. This was years ago. People aren't studying philosophy. I didn't get taught philosophy at all in high school. A little bit in middle school, which was so random, but it was more like literature and art and learning about England. I don't know. More people need to learn about philosophy. For sure. Okay. Segregation rebranded. There have been some modern segregation allegations going on and events going on in schools and universities. It's crazy business. So Western Washington University had a black affinity housing, and it was black only. They say that anybody could apply, but we are looking for a specific demographic of people, which is segregation. That is illegal. You cannot discriminate because of race. Emory University segregated black women's residence floor. There's another one. Oakland Elementary, playdate by race. There were like flyers, and people wanted to do a POC only playdate for elementary school kids. I am not even kidding. They're teaching their kids to be racist. Preston Hollow Elementary, another one in Dallas. a lawsuit over class assignments by race. So this is when they were separating entire classrooms. The whole school was separated by race. Too elementary. That's crazy. Democrats claim to be ending racism, but reintroduce separation. They are encouraging racism. DEI is a form of racism. Affirmative action is a form of racism. They brand it as safe spaces or affinity groups, but really it's just exclusionary. The reality is voluntary segregation is still segregation. If you have this was a perfect example. Matt Walsh. If you have a blacks only drinking fountain and a whites only drinking fountain and then an everybody drinking fountain, does it really matter because you still have a blacks only drinking fountain and a whites only drinking fountain? Horrible. So, recap. Slavery, Jim Crow, welfare dependency, information control, and identity segregation. Democrats, party of slavery for now and always. Every step, loss of one tool, inventive of another. When the door closed, a window opened. Or they dug their way out. So I wanted to take a minute to pay a tribute to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk encouraged me to go long form and to even start talking about what I was passionate about, which is politics, culture, and history. And I'm so glad that I did, because I found people that appreciated what I said, and it gave me courage to keep going. And then after he was assassinated, I definitely felt a need to go long form so I can really dive deep in what I think about certain things going on in our culture and our country. Politically, religiously, I am a Christian, so I will be talking about Christian persecution in America and around the world. But I wanted to say thank you, Charlie, for challenging people like me to step into the light and step into the fight. And I hope that it makes a small difference.
How do you want to be remembered?
I mean, if I die?
Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith in my life.
So this is episode 1 of the Unfeminist podcast, and if you are tired of slogans and narratives and you want to see simplified receipts and patterns, then subscribe here. The Democrats have always been the party of slavery, and I'll keep pulling receipts to prove it. So thank you very much. Goodbye.